Three bold predictions for the 2024 Rams, and should the Rams sign this free agent linebacker? That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and give us your bold prediction for the Rams for the 2024 season. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 Sports, Bleacher Report, Locked On Dodgers Nation. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's entering his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, repping his Gauchos today. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, a reporter and analyst threw out some very bold predictions for the Rams for the 2024 season, and also a linebacker that an insider thinks the Rams should sign. We're going to get into that right now. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Travis. So we love our bold predictions. I think we'll spend some episodes throwing out our personal ones. But today we're going to talk about Connor Orr of ESPN. He threw out 100 bold predictions for the upcoming season. And first and foremost, is this guy a closet Rams fan? Because some very favorable predictions that would make Rams fans very happy. Good. And the first one, we've talked about this a lot on this show. He thinks that Aaron Donald is going to come out of retirement. He says that Donald has put together a Hall of Fame career, but when his coach calls around Halloween and pitches him on a sweetheart deal that allows Donald to practice sparingly but still come in and absolutely destroy game plans on the weekend, he won't say no. So for me, I still feel like the chances are slim that AD comes back. I want to believe he will. If he does come back, I mean, I'll name my first son Aaron Donald for sure. But I just think that it doesn't fit in track with the kind of player he is to come back mid-season. I hope I'm wrong. I pray that I'm wrong, but I just don't think he's going to be in the Horns next year.
Yeah, I think it comes down to whether or not you want to look at this with your head or with your heart, right?
Yeah.
That your head is telling you probably not. I get it that he's a guy that's been in the league a long time, 10 years, and, you know, as good as he took care of himself, as dedicated as he was to fitness and training, I would imagine his body feels pretty banged up after 10 years of doing what he did in the trenches and everything that comes along with that. He made a very conscious decision. There really isn't a ton left for him to do in this game. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame. He's won the Super Bowl. He's widely considered the best player ever to play at his position, if not one of the 2 or 3 best. There's not a lot left on the bone as far as that goes. That's the more analytical side. The more emotional side is he's still really good. The Rams could really use him. There's a chance to win another Super Bowl. I mean, not that everybody gets a Super Bowl. That's certainly not true. But, you know, Super Bowls do come around occasionally. A chance to get 2, that's a totally different dynamic. That puts you in a totally different class. So there's NFL players, there's Super Bowl champions, and then there's multiple Super Bowl champions. So I think that prediction of a phone call coming, I think a prediction of Les Snead and or Sean McVay trying to twist his arm a little bit is really interesting. I would love for that to be what it is. I think the Rams need to be in a really good position for him to come back and do it. I don't think he's coming back just to do it. They need to be close to making another run. If that all lines up, then I'll give it a 1 out of 5 chance that he changes his mind and comes back and plays.
Okay, I'll take that. I mean, for me, this is what I think when it comes to Aaron Donald. When you think about Aaron Donald, yes, there is the Super Bowl. Yes, there is him pointing at the ring. But I think about the totality of his career. I think of 3 defensive players of the year. I think of 8 times on the first team All-Pro, 10 Pro Bowls, right? And if you come back in October, right, do you put yourself in a position to be an All-Pro, to be a Pro Bowler, right, to win Defensive Player of the Year? I think for me, his legacy is just more his entire career. I think he's defined by that one Super Bowl. And I'm not so sure that another Super Bowl really takes his legacy to a whole nother level. I mean, a lot of people even right now will say he's the best defensive player, along with only a handful of guys, the Reggie Whites, the Lawrence Taylors, to play the game of football. So I think for me, I almost think there's a better shot of him coming back when training camp starts and the body clock goes off. He says, you know what? Pick up the phone, Sean, let's roll, do a little Michael Jordan facts. I'm back. Make it very simple and get back in the mix. I just think he's someone, the way he's built, the workman-like kind of old school type of player is that he says, you know what, if I'm going to win a championship, I want to do it from start to finish, because it's got to be tough in October when you're handing out, trick or treat candy. I don't know what he's going to be doing around Halloween. And they just say, okay, the next day I'm going to get doubled, tripled, quad teamed, right? I think it's kind of a tough ask. I don't think he's going to come back per se, but I think if he did, I could see it for an entire run versus in October.
I can only assume that Aaron Donald is a full-size candy bar guy at Halloween, so I would imagine that he's giving away, the full-size.
They look like small. They look like bite size in his hands, though, right?
That's probably true. It looks like a fun size, but it's probably the king size in his hand. Look, here's another part of this, and I hope that he lives a long, healthy, happy life and gets to do whatever he wants with whoever he wants to do it forever and ever and ever. Hope he's a little bored. I hope that by the time we get to Thanksgiving, Halloween, I should say, that he's a little bit bored and just a little bit of that, man, this isn't quite what I had in mind. I still, to your point, my body is telling me you're supposed to be playing football right now, because I think if that's true, I think if we get to the point where he has, a little bit of that, man, I shouldn't have done it yet. But if he has something that is incredibly stimulating for him, if his body is feeling really good, if he's engaged every single day, I don't think we're going to see him again. You want a little bored, you want a little hungry. And I think that could be an interesting situation for the Rams. Intellectually, analytically, I really don't think he's coming back. But the way that the coach, the way that the general manager, the way that his teammates have all talked about him, they're very clearly leaving that door cracked open for him. And I hope that he walks through it.
Absolutely. As long as there's more than a 0% chance, I find it exciting. I think it's still worth talking about. Question is, are you a full-size candy bar guy, Mr. Travis Rogers?
Not a chance.
Doing fun sizes?
We are the multi-bag from my local Albertsons where, and I try to get the ones that have like the junior mints and the peppermint patties that nobody likes. So I get to eat them all myself because nobody takes them out of the bowl.
Oh, that's smart. One time I rolled up to a place in South Pass. There was a big bowl of toothbrushes. Come on now. That's just foul. Toothbrushes. For me, hey, I don't got a lot of trick-or-treaters rolling up to apartment 108 here on Fountain in Hollywood, so I don't have to worry about that. But nice to know. But coming up next, we got some more bold predictions for the 2024 Rams that we're going to react to. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
All right, you know this about me, right? If you're listening to this podcast, I would imagine it's true about you as well. I love sports. In fact, I love them so much that I really never want them to stop. But as the playoffs are basically over now, right? Stanley Cup playoffs over. The NBA playoffs are over. That could mean that you get fewer games, and the sports aren't something like I want them to, right? So, but FanDuel, they're going to let you keep the sports going whenever I want, whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that you or I are in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. You heard me right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So make sure that you get that FanDuel app on your phone. Head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. You know how much D-Mac and I love talking baseball, love talking about all the Dodger stuff that's going on. FanDuel, your official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Go do it right now. Don't forget to put in that promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, FanDuel.com/lockedon.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, just a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Also, a shout out to those every listeners that watch and listen to every single episode during this month. We do 3 episodes per week, so just a reminder. So it's not that we're taking some extra days off or anything like that, but look for those 3 episodes a week. So we're going to keep jumping into known Rams fan Connor Orr's bold predictions for the 2024 season, and he's got some more bold ones. So he also has Puka Nacua finishing with at least 1,800 receiving yards alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown and Tyreek Hill. So 1,800 for Mr. Puka Nacua. And, of course, historic rookie year, 105 catches, 1,486 yards. The year was truly historic, but 1,800 is a whole nother stratosphere. And I'll tell you this, if he has 1,800, that's not going to make me happy, because that's going to tell me that Cooper Kupp didn't return to form. So I hope that he's around. If he can just match 1,486 or be anywhere from 12 to 1,400 with more touchdowns and less drops and continuing to improve as a wide receiver in the National Football League, I'll take that. But 1,800, that's a very lofty number there.
I think anything close to the 1,400 that he had last year is a really good season. And I think you hit on a really important look. If he does 1,800, that's great for Puka. I don't know how great necessarily that is for the Rams. Now, maybe Matthew Stafford's having one of those years where he's just lighting it up. You know, that Matthew Stafford has Cooper Kupp over 1,000 yards. He's got Puka Nacua over 1,500 yards. That Demarcus Robinson gets in the end zone 6, 7, 8 times, whatever it may be. Maybe the tight end position is really productive as well. But to me, in a scenario where Puka Nacua has nearly 1,800 yards, that means that he's your only target, and that's not good. You're going to need to spread the wealth around a little bit. We've seen the Rams have that 3-headed monster. We've seen it with Robert Woods and Kupp and Brandon Cooks. We've seen it with Odell. We've seen it with a lot of different guys come through here along the way. The Rams are at the best when the ball goes to a lot of different players. The good news about potentially Nacua having a season like that means that Matthew Stafford is lighting it up. Here's better news. What if you have a number like that that's a little bit lower and you're running the ball a lot more? Because if you're running the ball a lot more, it means you're ahead. It means you're winning. It means you're spinning clock, burning it. You're not having to chuck it 35, 40 times a game. So while those are great fantasy football numbers, it would be fun, and I'd love to see Puka do some things that are pretty extraordinary like that. If those numbers are down, that means they're running the ball more, and that's a good sign for the Rams when it comes to winning and losing.
100%. And you beat me to it. I was just going to mention the running game, because he also has Kyren Williams is going to finish with a stat line of 1,323 yards, 11 touchdowns, and continuing to break out. And I think that for me, it's not the 1,323 for Kyren that's important. It's not the 1,800 for Puka Nacua that's important. It's 2,750 combined between Puka and Cooper Kupp. It's 1,800 to 2,200 combined between Kyren Williams and Blake Corum, because that's the name of the game in the NFL in 2024. The modern game is that you want to limit the workload. You want to spread the wealth, and they invested in this offensive line. You brought in Jackson. You re-signed Kevin Dotson. You moved Steve Avila to center. They're going to try to run the rock, and you said it best. If you're running the rock, that means you're bleeding clock late in games. That means you're stacking W. So that's ideal. If you're passing, a lot of times that means you're trailing in games. You're trying to make your way back into it. So yes, you do have to want to have that ability. And I'm not going to give away all my bold predictions here. I have a ton of them, but one of them is I think that Rams are going to have a top 5 offense in the NFL. I think they're going to enter the group chat with the Dolphins and the 49ers and the Lions, teams like that, the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's because of the versatility and mixing up from the running game and the passing game, like you said.
Yeah, the Williams part of this, I think, is incredibly important. You want him to have a big season for 2 reasons. Number one, he's an incredibly important part of what you're doing. But number 2, it means he's playing a lot. You know, the only knock on Williams through his first 2 years in the league has been that he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's missed, we've talked about this a lot. The everydayers know this, that He got hurt on the first play of the season a couple of years ago and more or less missed the entire season. So you're talking about a guy who came into the next year. You go back a year from now, we're sitting here, Cam Akers was still your number one guy. You weren't quite sure what Kyron Williams was going to bring. Akers, we know what happened there. Next thing you know, Williams is getting an opportunity. He's killing it. He's doing absolutely fantastic. And then he gets hurt and he misses a pretty significant chunk of time. And he still was near the top of the league when it came to rushing yards. So he's got unbelievable talent. Like you mentioned, Blake Corum can certainly help spell him a little bit, get him off of the field for a series here and there. So I think all of these things together, all of these numbers, all of these offensive numbers that we've talked about so far are going to be the way that the Rams win games. I think that they're still going to be led offensively. The Donald thing obviously could change that, but if they're going to win games, they're going to have to win games by scoring points, a lot of points, probably somewhere in the 30s on average. If they can do that, like you said, that's certainly a top 5 offense at that point. And that's going to win them a bunch of games.
They're going to do it. I'm telling you, but this team is going to be firing on all cylinders with the ball. Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford stays healthy. You guarantee me 16, 17 games of Matthew Stafford and a healthy offensive line. And Kyron, I think this team, like you said, because they're going to have to lean on that side of the ball with AD presumably gone and a young defense figuring things out along the way. But Puka, you give me 1,800. I mean, we know, of course, Cooper has the record 1,947 back in 2021. With Puka, you put up 1,800 plus. I'll rock the Puka shells. I'll go get him at Claire's in the Arcadia Mall, maybe your home mall right there. I'll wear the Puka wig with the 17 jersey. I hope that if that happens, I'll put that out there right now. I'll wear a 17 jersey with the Puka wig and the Puka shells, because 1,800 in your second year for a 5th round pick, man, that'd be great stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still called this. It used to be called the Santa Anita Fashion Place. That's the Arcadia Mall. So okay. They may have changed the name in the 30 years since I've lived there last, but there was a Claire's there the last I mentioned. Yeah, look, if they get numbers like that from those guys and Puka, like you said, you get a 1,400-yard season, an 1,800-yard season from a guy that was picked towards the back of the 5th round. That is just bonkers production. And I hope I'm sitting here saying I didn't think he was going to be able to go above and beyond where he was a year ago. I think if he's like I said at the beginning of this, if he's around where he was a year ago, that is a phenomenal second season. If he goes by 400 yards, forget about it.
For sure. And I think, look, like I said, leads the offseason making us cry, buying his mom a car and all that stuff. But you do that kind of stuff, you take your legacy to a whole nother level. But coming up next, we have a linebacker that an ESPN insider thinks the Rams should consider signing. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, so Schatz from ESPN, he did a column where he mentioned one player that he thinks every team should consider signing, and he thinks that the Rams should go after free agent linebacker Kwon Alexander. Shad said the Rams don't use their second off-ball linebacker very much, but they could definitely use a veteran upgrade on Christian Rozeboom. Alexander, 30, played reasonably well for the Steelers a season ago, particularly in pass coverage. The Rams could also take a shot at Shaquille Leonard getting back to his past level of play. They want a cheap gamble with a lower floor and a higher ceiling. So first thing I want to point out is that, yes, Rozeboom, he hasn't been great. He hasn't been terrible. He's been kind of just okay. But the Rams, they don't prioritize that position like some other teams. And I think that's kind of the mindset. And also just kind of reading the tea leaves of what Sean McVay said during OTAs, just doesn't feel like they're going to go out there and make a big impact signing heading into the season. They kind of did their Christmas shopping already, right?
Yeah, well, I think you said it best, Doug, that the Rams simply do not put a high value on that position. That's just something that in the I guess this is the 9th year coming up there back in Los Angeles. That has just not been where they decide to spend money, where they decide to spend assets. I think they got Ernest Jones in the middle, who's going to hold down a whole bunch of things. And outside of that, I think they're happy probably with happy enough with what they have. Now, where it does get interesting, if you can get a guy cheap and there is some upside and there really isn't a lot of risk involved, if this is hey, bring him in, see if it works. If you get it relatively cheap and you get a productive player, then sure. Those are always, again, not to the everydayers know where I'm going to go with this. This is what makes teams like the Dodgers and the Rams so dangerous, is that they're willing to take something. They'll take some chances and believe in what they do will make that guy better. We'll take that pitcher that hasn't thrived somewhere else. He'll thrive for us. We'll take that guard that maybe hasn't thrived for you. He'll thrive for us. And maybe the same thing could be true of somebody like Kwon Alexander. I like that the Rams have developed a reputation of doing that. I think it's an incredibly good one. But I keep coming back to what you said at the beginning, D-Mac. This is just not a position that the Rams have placed a whole lot of emphasis on in the Sean McVay era.
Yeah, I think if they want to upgrade that position, which they could certainly want to do. I mean, Rose Booney played 30 or more snaps in every game for the first 9 weeks of the season last season. So that definitely tells you that guys can get their opportunities behind Ernest Jones, right? Yeah. So I think for me, if you want to find a player like that, it's got to be on the scrap heap, right? It's got to be someone that is either cap casualty, someone that's kind of looking to be a reclamation project to get his career back on track. But Kwon Alexander, yes, he's no longer that Pro Bowl caliber player, but, I mean, he's still highly productive. 41 tackles, 5 TFLs, 2 QB hits, 1 sack in just 9 games at a 74.3 PFA coverage grade. When you have those kind of numbers, you're really going to put yourself in a better position to get a better deal than I think the Rams are going to want to give him. So I think that's really the bottom line. If he would help this team, he would be an upgraded Roseboom, but I just don't think they're going to allocate those resources for someone like Alexander. I think they either want to go bigger with something in a trade, kind of like we saw with Dotson, or kind of get one of these high upside players that they can attain because they're the Rams, like you mentioned, and that they've made themselves into an organization that can get guys like that.
Well, here's the pitch, right? The pitch is not dissimilar to what we talked about with the Dodgers. And, you know, if you're Kwon Alexander, you're probably trying to maximize your bottom line, right? That you need to make as much money as quickly as you can for as long as you can. And I get that. But if he has slightly different priorities, if the priority is an opportunity to be on a good team, an opportunity to be in a great organization, an opportunity to live in a city that's highly livable, then maybe that's the sales pitch. If it's just, I need to, you know, they're offering another $1 across the street, then go take the $1. You know, I get that. And that's not even meant with any sort of shade at all. I get it. I get the economics of it all. And if that's how he wants to do it, all respect in the world. But if it's something other than just that, I think the Rams have a fairly powerful pitch.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that for sure. I mean, if he wants to get in on the bet on yourself type stuff that we saw with a DeMarcus Robinson, a Kel Witherspoon, a player like that, of course, it makes all the sense in the world. Roseboom's a player that, I mean, he's additive on special teams. You can see him in small bursts here and there, right? But he's not someone who's definitely going to be a plus type player for you on the field. And I definitely think that we'll see how this year kind of forms out, but really, maybe they will start prioritizing different positions without Aaron Donald, right? So it's a lot of unknown right now, and you have to start that evaluation process. As tough as that's going to be, it's something that we can't really assess until we see how it looks like on the field and really assess what they currently have internally.
Well, like you said, too, with a special teams player like Roseboom, you know, he's a good special teams player. He's done a good job there. Who knows what that's going to look like? It's going to be so different now with the new kickoff rules, that special teams play is going to be far different than anything we've seen before. Who knows? It may be a complete circus. It may not work at all, and they go right back to the way that it was next season. And this is that, you know, we're talking about this 10 years from now. Remember in 2024 when they did that weird XFL kickoff thing, and it may just be a wild memory, or it may be the thing that kind of revitalizes that play, and they're looking for very different skill sets and different sorts of players that can do different sorts of things. So I think when you're talking about depth pieces, whether it's a Roseboom, whether it's a player like Kwon Alexander, you really do need to kind of factor in that special teams are going to be very, very different. It might not be the first thing that factors in, but it may be a thing that factors in. And I think that probably works in somebody like Roseboom's advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's going to be the latter of those because it's the NFL. They're going to make a play out of it. They're going to find a way to make it interesting. So you're right. That's going to open up a whole set of players and player profiles that can help you be successful and effective in that part of the game. We know that the NFL, the margins are so slim that they're going to have teams that are going to want to be the best at that. So we'll see how that plays out. And honestly, guys, you got to really have opportunities, or it's going to be rough for some players. But I think Roseboom definitely has that ability in him for sure, and you've seen it in his career so far. So that's going to do it, though, for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA, and you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.